He stood there like it was nothing, grinning with 2 plates in his hand, one for me, one for her, like the moment wasn't about to change the way I saw both of them forever. "She's just a family friend," he said. And just like that, every red flag I'd ever folded into origami peace signs came unfolding all at once. My name is Renee Matthews. I'm 47 years old, and this is the story of how I bought the house my husband was sneaking off to and made his little secret tenant sign the lease with my name on it. It was a Sunday, one of those southern Sundays that smelled like ribs, charcoal, and dollar store citronella candles that didn't really work. The kind of day where the air is heavy enough to press against your skin, where music from somebody's Bluetooth speaker fights with the sound of kids screaming in the distance. We were hosting our annual end-of-summer family cookout in Charlotte, just outside the city, where the grass still grows wild and folks still wave when they drive by. You could hear cicadas tuning up like a full band behind the tree line. Daryl had been outside since morning, talking loud enough for the neighborhood to know the grill master had arrived. The grill was smoking. Somebody's baby was crying. My potato salad sat proud on the folding table with the blue plastic cloth, sweating under the sun like it had a job to do. And my husband, Daryl, was showing Tasha around like she was the mayor of Mecklenburg County. She wore one of those too tight maxi dresses with gold hoop earrings that said Queen in rhinestones, hair laid, edges slicked, shoes too clean for anybody's backyard. And that perfume, Lord, you could smell it before you saw her, sweet, floral, and loud like she wanted to leave a trail wherever she walked. And the way she smiled at me, it was the kind of smile that says, "I've seen your toothbrush next to his, but he keeps mine in the drawer." Daryl laughed too loud that day, told jokes with his chest, played spades like he had something to prove. Every time he slapped a card down, he looked over at her, not me. That told me everything I needed to know. He made a big show of refilling my sweet tea, rubbing my shoulder like it was all good. The kind of affection that's meant to be seen, not felt. But I saw how she walked around the house like she already knew where the guest bathroom was, like she'd already been there. I clocked it. Did I cause a scene? No. I handed her a paper plate and said, "Help yourself, sis. You're family now, right?" She blinked, smiled, and nodded, her lip gloss catching the sunlight. That was the first lie she told with a smile. And I let her tell it. Daryl and I had been married 11 years at that point, together for 13. He worked in auto finance, used car loans, small dealerships, nothing flashy but steady. He could sell you a dream and a warranty plan in the same sentence. I worked HR for a home health care company, mostly managing caregiver compliance and onboarding new CNAs. We had no kids, just a cat named Sable and a paid-off SUV in the driveway. Most of our conversations had turned into calendar updates and bill reminders. "Did you pay the Duke Energy bill? Don't forget your doctor's appointment." Love had become logistics. Still, I wasn't unhappy until I realized I'd mistaken comfortable for safe. 2 weeks after that cookout, I noticed little things. His phone started living on silent mode. He took it to the bathroom now, tucked it under his pillow at night. The same man who used to fall asleep mid-text was suddenly guarding that phone like a pacemaker. Then came the overdraft. Our joint checking account dipped below what I'd call normal. $420 out at a Wells Fargo in a zip code we didn't live in. When I asked him about it, he said he'd loaned money to a cousin from Greensboro going through a divorce. Funny thing is, I'd heard that same excuse back in 2013. From a man I left. That night, I opened a separate savings account in my name only. I didn't confront him. I cooked dinner, I kissed him goodnight. I watched Law and Order like nothing was bleeding. But the next day, at work, I printed out our bank statement. And every Friday, like clockwork, a $300 cash withdrawal was made between 4 Mossern and 5 Mule p.m., right when he said he was still finishing up at work. Still, I said nothing. I let it bake, like a sweet potato pie that needs just a few more minutes before you slice it. I became quieter, more observant, not cold, just steady, like a lake right before it freezes. One night, about 3 weeks after the cookout, I got home early from work. I was supposed to stay late for onboarding, but the new hire canceled. When I walked in, Daryl was on the phone, didn't hear me come in. "Yeah, I saw your lights," he said, pacing near the living room window. "You home already?" Pause. "Nah, she's got her own thing tonight. You good for Thursday?" He turned the corner and froze when he saw me standing there, my purse still on my shoulder. He fumbled, laughed, hit end faster than a guilty man can say, "Hello." I smiled. "Everything okay?" He scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, just checking on Jerome. You remember Jerome from the cookout?" "Oh, Tasha's cousin, right?" His face twitched. Just for a second. I filed it. That night, I pulled up Tasha's Facebook page. I'd friended her out of courtesy after the cookout. Her profile was public. She posted a photo of a new welcome mat. Captions said, "New keys, new peace, just me and God." There was a house number in the corner of the photo. I zoomed in, wrote it down. Westbrook Drive. I knew that street. Small duplexes, older builds, nothing fancy, but rent-friendly. I checked Zillow. One of the duplex units had recently sold, but the one next door? Still owned by a retired couple in Pineville, listed as for sale by owner. That's when the idea landed in my chest like the Holy Ghost in a Black Baptist choir. I could buy that property. I could buy it and wait. Not to evict, not to harm, just to own. Because ownership is the quietest kind of power. The next morning, I called my cousin Deja. She's a notary and low-key realtor. "I need you to help me buy something," I said. She laughed. "Girl, you finally getting that vacation home?" "Nope, I want a duplex. Quiet little one on Westbrook, the one next to 1437. Deja paused. "You got some tea to spill?" "Not yet," I said, "but the kettle is whistling." The line went silent for a second. Then she chuckled. "You sound too calm. That means somebody done messed up." "You could say that." "Okay, Renee, I'll pull the comps. You got your financing ready?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Cash and credit. Both solid." "Bet. I'll text you the contact info for the owners." That night, Daryl came home smelling like cologne that didn't belong to me. He kissed my cheek and said he was thinking about picking up overtime. I smiled. Do what you gotta do. Then I went into the bedroom, closed the door, and emailed Deja, the offer letter. The retired couple responded the next day. They were thrilled to sell, said their kids were pressuring them to move closer to family. We met that Friday. I signed the paperwork in a quiet notary office that smelled like lemon Lysol and cheap coffee. By Monday, the property was mine. No big announcement, no confetti, just a digital confirmation email that said, "Congratulations, you are now the registered owner of 1439 Westbrook Drive." I stared at that line for a long time, because now I owned the wall between my husband's double life and my peace. I didn't cry, didn't smile either, just felt that deep, still satisfaction that comes from knowing the scales are finally about to balance. The next Sunday, Daryl got a text while we were watching TV. I caught the corner of the screen, a heart emoji, a purple one. He tilted his phone away. I said nothing. He got up, stretched, and said, "Gonna step out for a bit, grab some gas." "All right," I said. "Don't be too long." I waited 15 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys. I didn't follow him. Not directly. I just took a drive. Toward Westbrook. The sun was setting when I pulled onto that narrow street. Orange light bounced off the hoods of parked cars. There he was, his car, parked right in front of 1437. And there she was, standing in the doorway, wearing that same smile from the cookout. I parked 2 houses down, watched for a minute. He walked in. She closed the door behind him. I sat there in silence. Then I whispered to myself, "You just made a rent payment to your wife, fool." The next Sunday, I went to church like always. Same pew, same soft hum of the choir, same sunlight breaking through, stained glass and catching the dust in midair like tiny halos. But something in me had shifted. The ushers still moved in rhythm, their white gloves soft against the polished offering plates. The organ still moaned like it knew every burden in that room. But while everyone else swayed, I sat still. While the pastor preached about patience, I thought about paperwork. While the ushers passed the tray, I thought about property taxes. Because once a woman sees the truth, even God knows she can't unsee it. I kept my Bible open, but my mind somewhere else. Not on Psalms, on signatures, on deeds, on equity. Every amen around me just sounded like agreement. Agreement that I was done being blind. When the choir hit that last note, I closed my eyes and whispered, "All right, Lord, I heard you. Now let me move quiet." I didn't tell a soul what I was planning. Not my mama, not my best friend Tanya, not even Deja. Not at first. I just started collecting quiet evidence like coupons in an envelope. Daryl's receipts, text screenshots, bank alerts. Those late night, "I'll be home soon" messages that smelled like someone else's perfume. Every time he came home late, I wrote the time down in a small notebook I kept inside a cookbook. Between the pages, a Southern wife's survival guide, if you will. It wasn't bitterness, it was record keeping. And then, it happened. Tuesday night. He was in the shower again. Steam curling up the bathroom walls, fogging the mirror until everything looked like a memory. His phone buzzed on the counter, face down. The screen lit up once, then again. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The preview was enough. Thanks for the deposit from family friend. That heart hit me harder than any argument ever could. Not the message, the ease of it. How casual betrayal can look when it's typed in lowercase. I felt something inside me close, like a vault door sealing shut. When he came out, towel low around his waist, whistling like nothing was off, I smiled. "Everything okay?" He froze mid-step, surprised I was even speaking. "Yeah," he said too fast. "Just work stuff." I turned back to folding laundry. Calm. Deliberate. "Mm-hmm. Work always texting with hearts now?" He laughed. Too loud, too forced. "You going through my phone?" "No," I said softly. "It's sitting right there. You left it unlocked." He pointed at me with that defensive grin that always came before a lie. "You trippin', Renee. You always think somebody after you." I folded one more towel. Took my time. Maybe I just learned to read the fine print. He looked like he wanted to keep going, to gaslight me into confusion, but he didn't. He just mumbled something about crazy women and walked out. That night, I waited for his snoring to start. When it did, deep and careless, I slipped out of bed. I sat at the kitchen table, the one we bought from IKEA back when we were still building a home. I opened my laptop, logged into our bank account, and stared at the numbers. Then I moved money. Quietly, cleanly. Closed out a side account we'd opened years ago for emergencies. That was my money. My overtime, my bonuses, my little wins I'd tucked away while he was out working late. Well, it was pouring now. The next morning, I met Deja at her office, a small space off Beatty's Ford Road with fake plants and gospel radio humming low. She looked at me over her glasses, pen tapping against her notepad. "You serious?" "As a mortgage statement," I said. She leaned back, grinning slow. "You gonna make me a villain in your story, huh?" "Nah," I said, sipping my coffee. "Just a witness." We ran the numbers like we were counting blessings. That duplex on Westbrook, listed for $168,000. I had $34,000 in savings, another $12,000 from my grandmother's life insurance that I never touched. I could hear my grandma's voice in my head. "Don't spend it on nonsense, baby. Spend it on something that makes you free." Deja called the owners, an older couple, the Williamses, retired teachers ready to move closer to their grandkids. They sounded tired, ready to let go. Said they'd take $155,000 cash if it closed fast. I told her, "Make it happen." She looked up from her notepad and smiled. "You sound like somebody who already got the ending written." "For once," I said, "I do." For the next few weeks, I played my role like nothing was brewing, cooked dinner, answered his small talk, went to work, paid bills. But every night after Daryl fell asleep, I opened my laptop and studied. Property management laws, North Carolina eviction codes, fair housing rules, tax filing for landlords. I read until my eyes blurred and the room tilted. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about power. Quiet paper power. I remembered something my daddy told me when I was little back in Gastonia. We were sitting on the porch, him oiling his shoes before church. He said, "Baby, the one who signs the check always gets the last word." Back then, I thought he meant bosses. Now I knew he meant ownership. 2 weeks later, Daryl claimed he had to work late again. I nodded, kissed his cheek, and said, "Don't work too hard." Then I waited 10 minutes and grabbed my keys. I drove by his job, the small auto finance office off Wilkinson Boulevard. Dark. No cars in the lot except the janitor's old van. So I kept driving, down I-85, past the exit signs that felt like checkpoints in a test. Left on Freedom Drive, then another left on Westbrook. There it was. That same tan Nissan parked outside 1437 Westbrook. Lights on, curtains cracked open just enough for a silhouette to dance across them. Her silhouette. I parked across the street, engine off, heart steady, didn't cry, didn't curse, just watched. Every laugh that floated out through that thin wall of air felt like static in my ears. I stayed 10 minutes. That was enough. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of sweet tea, sat in the dark, and said out loud, "Okay, God, I see it now. Thank you for showing me before you elevated me." By Friday, Deja called, "Paperwork's ready. You still sure?" Positive. We met at a small notary office off Albemarle Road. The sign out front was half faded, but inside smelled like peppermint and lemon oil. The notary, Mr. Clay, was an older man with kind eyes and coffee-stained fingers. He looked over the document, then up at me. "You buying property solo, Mrs. Matthews?" "Yes, sir." He nodded slow, approving. "Congratulations. Not many women handle business this clean." I smiled. "Oh, it's personal and professional." He chuckled. "Ain't it always?" When I signed that deed, something in me exhaled for the first time in years. It wasn't the thrill of revenge. It was the peace of preparation, the kind of peace that hums underneath your ribs when you know you've done something unshakable. I didn't tell Deja why I picked that property. She didn't ask, but I could see in her eyes she already knew. We filed the paperwork with the county clerk, USPS certified. I even opened a small business account under RM Properties LLC. That night, I sat at the kitchen counter with a glass of Merlot and my laptop open to the confirmation email. When I saw "Property Deed Recorded, Westbrook Drive," I whispered, and just like that, the deed is done. Daryl came home smiling, smelling like cologne that didn't match mine. "Guess what, baby? Promotion coming up. My boss said I might manage 2 new lots next quarter." I looked at him and smiled back, soft as silk. "That's great, Daryl. You deserve it." He grinned, kissed my cheek, and disappeared into the shower. While the water ran, I refreshed my inbox. The deed confirmation glowed back at me. It looked like freedom in font form. The next few days, I started laying groundwork, ordered a new mailbox key, set up the landlord portal, hired a handyman named Curtis to check on a loose gutter. He called me Miss Matthews like I was royalty. A week later, I received my first rent payment through Zelle from Tasha Williams. Description: rent for November. I stared at it for a long minute, sipping my coffee slow. Then I smiled. That sound, that soft Zelle ping, might as well have been a church bell. He came home that night talking about how he needed space to think. I folded my arms, leaned against the counter. "Take all the space you need." He nodded like he was the victim. "I just need to clear my head, Renee. Don't want to say something I can't take back." "Understandable," I said. My voice didn't shake. Everybody needs clarity. As he packed that duffel bag, his favorite one, the one I bought him for our 10th anniversary, I noticed he didn't pack much, just clothes. No bills, no responsibilities. Men like him never carry the weight. When he zipped it shut and looked up, I met his eyes one last time and said, "You know, Daryl, sometimes God don't snatch people out your life. He just changes the locks." The next week, silence became my favorite song. No arguments, no explanations, no midnight shouting matches echoing through the hallway like bad reruns. Just quiet. That kind of heavy quiet that hums in your bones. Not empty, not peaceful, just present. Daryl had moved into his sister's place for a few days to clear his head. That was his excuse. Truth was, he thought distance would buy him time. Time to figure out how to juggle his double life without losing his comfort, without losing the house. He didn't realize I'd already unstacked the deck. By the time he left, my hand was already on the board. Monday morning came crisp and cloudy, the kind of Carolina morning that smells like rain and pine needles. I put on my gray slacks, a white button-down, and grabbed my clipboard, my new armor. A calm smile, pressed hair, and the steady walk of a woman who knows exactly where she's going. The drive to Westbrook felt different this time. Not like a stakeout, like a visit to something I owned. Every red light looked softer. Every street sign a quiet nod from the universe. When I pulled up, the duplex sat still, half-shadowed by a tall oak, 2 small mailboxes side by side. The siding needed a fresh coat of paint, but the structure stood proud, like a woman who'd weathered storms and still kept her dignity. The handyman, Mr. Lionel, was already out front. Red Ford Ranger parked crooked in the gravel, tailgate down, toolbox open. He was retired Army, in his 60s, with that posture that says he still wakes up at 5 a.m. sharp. "Mornin', Miss Matthews," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Mornin', Lionel. That drain pipe still giving you trouble?" He nodded toward the side yard. "Yeah, behind Unit B, rusted clean through. Gonna need replacement, but nothing major." Unit B, Tasha's unit. I took a breath, adjusted my clipboard. "Let's take a look." He went around back. I walked up the small path to her door. The screen creaked when I knocked. A few seconds later, the door cracked open, and there she was. The woman who'd smiled at me across potato salad and ribs like she didn't smell the sin between them. She looked smaller without the performance. No heels, no full face of makeup, just leggings, a faded hoodie, hair twisted up in a messy bun that was fighting gravity. Still pretty. The kind of pretty that didn't know how dangerous it could be. "Oh, you must be from the management company," she said, blinking fast, voice soft but cautious. I smiled, polite, professional. "I'm with the property group, yes, just doing some standard inspections for winter prep." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Oh, sure. Come in." I stepped inside, clipboard held high like a badge. The air smelled like sandalwood and peppermint oil. Too clean, too curated. A diffuser hummed low on the shelf. The space was neat, minimalist, like she was trying to prove something to whoever might walk in. There were hints of Daryl everywhere, not in photos, but in details. A familiar throw pillow I'd seen in our guest room, a dealership keychain on the counter, a mug from Myrtle Beach that wasn't hers to own, and then, on the bookshelf, a framed photo of her standing beside a car from Daryl's dealership, the same one he'd called a test drive. I took my time, scanning the room, my smile never breaking. "Anything been leaking?" I asked. "Slow drains? Noise from neighbors?" She shook her head. "Nah, it's quiet here. I love it." Her tone was honest. Too honest. I nodded, pretending to jot notes. "That's good to hear." Lionel's footsteps shuffled in the hallway as he called out, "Pipe's worse than I thought. Gonna need a new joint fitting." "All right, I'll approve it," I called back, eyes still on Tasha. "Mind if I confirm your contact info for our records?" I asked. "Sure." She recited her email and number, unaware of the tremor in her voice. I wrote it down, underlined it twice. Then, with the same even tone I used at work, said, "Great. We'll be sending updated terms soon. There's been a change in ownership." She blinked. "Oh." I didn't know it sold. I nodded. Happened fast. New landlord likes to stay hands-on. She crossed her arms, shifting her weight. That's fine, as long as the rent don't jump too high. I didn't say a word, just gave her that same polite smile she'd given me the day she called my husband family. Lionel came back through the door, hands dusty. We're good here, Miss Matthews. I'll grab the part this afternoon. Appreciate it, I said, stepping past her toward the exit. The sunlight hit my face as I walked out, warm and blinding, like stepping through the truth itself. That night, I logged into the property system, pulled up her lease. My cursor hovered over the monthly rent box, $950. I changed it to $1,275. Not enough to break her, just enough to remind her that peace has a price. The next morning, I got a text from the landlord number Deja had helped me set up. Hi, this is Tasha from Unit B. Just got the rent increase email. Wanted to talk about it if possible? I let it sit. 2 hours, maybe 3. Then I typed, slow and measured. Hi, Tasha, understood. The rate reflects updated market values. Please let us know if you intend to renew under the new terms. She replied almost immediately. I guess I don't have much choice. I didn't reply. Silence speaks. 2 days later, my phone rang. Blocked number. I knew before I answered. I let it ring twice, just enough to make him sweat. Then picked up. You raised her rent? That's how he started. No, hello. No, how are you? Just straight to it. The tone of a man who finally realized control wasn't in his pocket anymore. I sipped my coffee, slow and calm. Who is this? He huffed. Don't play dumb, Renee. Tasha called me crying, said her rent went up $300. I tilted my head, smiling to myself. And? You bought the property next to hers? No, I said. I bought the property she lives in. Silence. The kind that stretches between two people who suddenly understand they're not speaking the same language anymore. He exhaled hard. Why would you? Because I could. Another pause. You know that's petty, right? Real petty. I almost laughed. No, Daryl. Petty is introducing your mistress to your wife as family. Petty is cashing out our joint account to pay her rent. Petty is thinking I wouldn't find out. He sighed, voice cracking. This ain't you. You're right, I said softly. This is who I became when you stopped being who you promised to be. The line stayed quiet after that, long enough for me to hear him swallow his pride. Then, click. That weekend, I drove back to Westbrook. Quiet street, golden leaves crunching under my shoes. I carried a printed notice in my hand. Professional letterhead, firm but fair. A reminder that her lease would convert to month if she didn't renew. I taped it gently to the door. The sound of the tape peeling echoed like a drumbeat in my chest. As I turned to walk away, I heard the door creak open. Can we talk? She asked. Her voice was softer than I remembered. I turned slowly. About? She stepped forward, arms crossed, but her confidence had cracks in it. About the rent. I stood still, silent, letting her fumble with her words. I didn't know, she said finally, that he was married. I raised an eyebrow. My silence asked the question for me. She shifted her weight, eyes dropping. Okay, I didn't know at first. That was closer to the truth. I nodded once. The rent stands. You're welcome to stay or leave at the end of the month. Her jaw tightened. Do you really need the money that bad? That's when I smiled. A slow, calm smile that said I was finished explaining myself to people who never deserved my peace. Sweetheart, I said, steady and low, I don't need your money. I took a step closer, my voice soft enough to feel like grace but sharp enough to cut. I just wanted you to know whose name is on the deed. Her mouth opened, maybe to speak, maybe to apologize. But no sound came out, and in that silence, I heard everything I needed. I turned, walked back to my car, and shut the door. The sound of it closing felt final, like punctuation. By the time December rolled around, the trees were bare, and so was my patience. The Charlotte air had that sharp bite to it, the kind that cuts through your coat and your composure at the same time. Even the sky looked cold, drained of color, pale gray like it had seen too much. And me? I'd seen enough too. Tasha finally signed the new lease, reluctantly, of course. Her Zelle memo that month read only 2 words, rent SMH. I printed that screenshot and pinned it to my fridge like a trophy, not because it was petty, but because it was proof that I could be calm and still be in control. Meanwhile, Daryl was still trying to play both sides. His texts came like waves, first sweet, then salty. I messed up, Renee. One message said late on a Thursday night, I need my family back. I stared at it for a long minute, then locked my phone. No reply. He followed up with a voice note a few hours later. I didn't listen. I was too busy finishing my online landlord certification course, laptop glowing against the dark. The only sounds were my pen scratching notes and the faint hum of the heater. I was learning about property codes, inspection timelines, Section 8 compliance, all the unglamorous details that make peace sustainable. See, once you start leveling up in silence, folks assume you're plotting revenge. But sometimes you're just building peace with paperwork. The next time he tried to show up at the house, our house, I let him in. Not because I missed him, because I wanted him to see who he'd walked away from. I was wearing my old college hoodie, hair wrapped, no makeup, my version of comfort. But the kitchen smelled like rosemary chicken and cornbread, the kind of meal that holds a home together. Soft jazz played from the Bluetooth speaker. A candle flickered on the counter, scenting the room with vanilla and sage. It wasn't for him. It was for me. When he stepped through the door, he hesitated. His eyes darted around like he was standing in a stranger's house. "You changed stuff," he mumbled. I didn't look up from my cutting board. I changed everything. He shuffled over to the couch, the same couch he used to collapse on after work, remote in one hand, silence in the other. "You go and talk to me," he said, "or just act like I'm not here." I finally looked at him, took a deep breath. "You're not here, Daryl. Not really." He blinked, like the words stung. "I told you I was sorry. I made a mistake." "No," I said, slow and steady. "You made a choice, and now I've made mine." I wiped my hands on a towel and handed him an envelope from the counter. He frowned, slid the paper out. His eyes moved left to right, then back again. When he looked up, his face had gone pale. "You serious?" "Dead." He stared at the signature line, mine in blue ink, filed, signed, and notarized. "Divorce papers," I said before he could ask. He laughed once, that hollow kind of laugh men use when they think charm can still work. "You throwing away 12 years?" I met his eyes. "No, Daryl. You threw it away when you brought her ribs at my cookout." He didn't have a comeback for that. His lips pressed together, eyes darting toward the door. That night, he left with his head hanging low and his mouth full of silence. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't even flinch when the door closed. I turned off the jazz, went upstairs, and lit a lavender candle. The flame shimmered like it was exhaling for me. Sable, my cat, jumped on the bed and circled twice before curling up beside me, purring deep like peace had a sound. I opened the book that had been sitting on my nightstand for months, read 2 chapters before my eyes got heavy, and for the first time in years, I fell asleep without rehearsing an argument. No imaginary comebacks, no tears, no checking my phone at midnight, just stillness. But peace is never permanent when people don't know how to stay gone. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "This Renee?" The voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "It is." Pause. "I just wanted to say, I'm moving out." Her tone was small, careful, like she was testing the air before stepping into it. I didn't speak, just waited. "I found a new spot," she said after a moment. "Closer to work. Figured it's time." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Understood. Another pause, the kind that carries too much air. I know you probably hate me. I sighed, not out of anger, but release. I don't. I just don't think about you enough to feel anything at all. Silence, then a sniffle. Well, thank you for being classy about everything. You could have dragged me. I don't need to drag anybody, I said. My voice came out quiet even. I walk away with the deed. Click. She hung up. No drama, no tears. Just the sound of finality between two women who'd both learned a lesson. One the hard way, one the holy way. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Left the place spotless. Even patched a small hole in the drywall where she'd probably hung something that didn't belong to her anymore. On the kitchen counter, she left a folded note, torn from a spiral notebook. I opened it slow. I hope you find better. He said you wouldn't, but I think he was scared you already had. I didn't cry, didn't even blink. I just folded the note once and slid it between the pages of my planner, right next to my goals for the year. Expand rental portfolio. Take that solo trip to Savannah. Never ignore my gut again. The next morning, I made coffee and sat by the window while the sun poured in through the blinds, soft and gold. I realized something. Closure doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it just shows up in a quiet room that smells like lavender and freedom. Daryl showed up one last time, this time with flowers, red roses, plastic wrapped from the grocery store, still damp from the cooler. He knocked. Once, twice. Didn't open the door. Through the peephole, I saw him standing there. Same old jacket, same nervous tapping of his foot. The man who once held my future now just looked like a memory still trying to matter. He waited a minute, then set the bouquet down on the porch and walked away. I let them sit there for a week, watched them wilt day by day, their red fading to brown, petals curling in on themselves like regret. When the stems turned brittle, I tossed them straight into the trash. No vase, no sentiment, just closure. The following Sunday, I hosted brunch for my girls. Tanya brought mimosas. Carla brought shrimp and grits. The house filled with laughter, the kind that heals old echoes. Gospel hummed low from the speaker. I'm still here, by the Williams brothers. The air was warm, full of orange juice, fizz, and butter. When I told them I was officially a landlord, Tanya nearly choked on her drink. Renee got properties now. Okay, queen. They all laughed, clinking glasses. I smiled, leaning back in my chair, robe sleeves rolled to my elbows. Just one for now, but it came with a lesson baked in. Carla grinned. And what's that? I sipped, slow. Let it land. That silence is cheaper than revenge. But it pays more interest. They all hollered at that, loud enough to make Sable dart from under the table. I laughed too, but quietly, because I knew the truth behind it. Silence hadn't just saved my pride. It had built me a future. And as I sat there full of grits, sunlight, and peace, I realized something simple and holy. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting free. The following Thanksgiving, the house smelled like sage, sweet potatoes, and quiet. That deep, healed kind of quiet. The kind that don't ache anymore. I'd been up since 7, apron tied, jazz playing low in the background, Ella Fitzgerald floating through the speakers like forgiveness in melody form. The oven hummed steady, steam fogged the window near the sink, and the sunlight that slipped through the blinds landed right across the table. The same table where I once sat crying over texts that never came. Now it was just me, the turkey, and the piece I built from scratch. Sable circled my ankles, tail swishing slow, waiting for a piece of cornbread to accidentally fall. She owned the place, or at least acted like it. Maybe she did. Her and me both. 2 quiet queens in a house full of memory and mortgage receipts with just my name on them. Daryl didn't call, didn't text, didn't send flowers this time. which was good. I'd had the locks changed back in the spring, not out of fear, out of clarity. You don't secure doors to keep people out. You secure them to protect the peace they never helped build. I set 2 plates at the table, one for me, one for Grandma Eloise, her spirit at least. I made her dressing recipe that morning, the one with turkey necks and too much sage, the one she used to stir with her elbow bent just so, humming gospel under her breath. Daryl used to roll his eyes at that dish, said it was too country for his new health goals, said nobody still cooks like that. Well, country fed me when city love starved me. Country kept me calm when the world tried to make me hard. I poured sweet tea into a mason jar, held it up toward the sunlight, and whispered, "We made it, Grandma." Because we did. 3 weeks earlier, I'd closed on a second rental property. East side of Charlotte. Triplex. Nothing fancy, but all mine. Tasha's unit had been the blueprint, the lesson, the seed. Now I was scaling it. My LLC was official. I had an EIN number, a dedicated business account, an accountant who called me ma'am, even hired a part-time property manager, Miss Sharon, a retired principal with silver curls and a no-nonsense tone that could scare the truth out of anyone. She ran everything with military precision, sent me photos, inspection updates, tenant memos. Every email started with, "Good afternoon, boss lady," and I never corrected her, because truth was, I'd earned it. I didn't block Daryl. Didn't have to. When a man can no longer access you, silence blocks him for free. But every now and then, his name still floated across my feed. Tagged in someone's birthday photo. He looked smaller, thinner, still smiling, but it was that borrowed kind of smile. The one people wear when they're performing normal. I didn't feel a thing. No anger, no nostalgia. Just distance. Like reading an old address on mail that don't come anymore. One chilly afternoon, about a month before Thanksgiving, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name written neat on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, folded twice. I moved up north. New start. Thank you for not becoming me when you had every right to. That taught me more than anything Daryl ever said. T, no tears, no drama, no excuses. I stared at it for a long time, not out of emotion, out of respect. She didn't owe me anything. I didn't need closure, but still, it felt full circle. Like 2 women who had survived the same storm, just on opposite sides of the thunder. I folded the note and tucked it inside a small wooden box on my bookshelf, right next to my first lease agreement, my first deed copy, and a photo of Grandma Eloise standing in front of her old house, the one I sold to buy my freedom. Her smile in that photo always looked like she knew this moment would come. The next Saturday, I went walking through Freedom Park. The air was crisp, golden leaves crunching under my boots. A mother jogged past me, laughing as her little boy raced ahead on a scooter. The lake reflected everything: trees, sky, peace. I stopped at a bench near the water and sat down, let the sun rest on my shoulders. For a long while, I didn't think about Daryl or Tasha or the past. I just breathed, because this quiet, earned, unbothered peace was the real reward. It hit me then. This is what happens when you stop begging for love and start building peace that earns interest. Not flashy, not loud, just consistent, like rent due on the 1st. When I got home, the sun had started to fade. The house glowed gold through the windows. My house. I hung my jacket by the door, poured another glass of sweet tea, and pulled out my planner, the one with the sticky notes and color tabs and little dreams turned into plans. I wrote down one last goal for the year. Take care of Renee like she's the only investment that matters. Because she is, and because now I finally understand, soft revenge doesn't need an audience. It doesn't scream. It doesn't post. It doesn't beg to be seen. Sometimes, soft revenge shows up as a key, a deed, a paid invoice, A calm woman in her own home on Thanksgiving morning, humming along to Ella Fitzgerald and not missing a thing she lost. I looked around the kitchen. Clean counters, candles flickering, a fridge full of groceries I bought with my peace of mind. For the first time, I realized how beautiful stability looks when it's dressed in gratitude. I set my plate down, folded my napkin, and said a quiet grace. Thank you, God, for lessons, for locks, for letting go. When people ask me if I regret not going off on him, not dragging him in the street, or lighting up his Facebook wall, or keying his car, I just smile. Because I did something better. Something lasting. I built a life he can't enter. And when I think about it, all the time I wasted trying to get even, trying to be heard, I smile even wider. Because silence, when you master it, is its own kind of symphony. I don't need his name in my mouth. I own the deeds, the memories, and my own peace now. The kind of peace that doesn't need permission. The kind that don't depend on apologies that'll never come. The kind that lives rent-free in me. So when people lean in, whispering, "Girl, did you ever get your lick back?" I laugh. "No, baby," I say, voice calm, steady. "I did better than revenge." I lean back in my chair, fork down, candle flame swaying in rhythm with the jazz. I became someone he can't afford anymore. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.